right, welcome back, Klefbombers, here for the NHL Fantasy Week 12. Yeah, Week 12. Took me a
12,
second.
yeah.
We're in our own personal Dynasty League semifinals / Constellation League getting started. Some other people that, for whatever reason, come along, find this podcast might be getting to their playoffs or like starting this week or possibly next week. So we came up with the idea of starting a new segment, fantasy related, not just for our league, where we're each going to pick a couple forwards, maybe a defenseman and a goalie that we see as 55% or less rosterable across all of Yahoo leagues. So you'd think in 55 in a solid league, it's probably rostered, but maybe in your fun league, it's not. And who
They're probably guys that are close to being available on waivers
yeah.
or have maybe just been scooped up by another person in your league.
Yeah, and they're just people we kind of like and maybe might help you out if you have a couple empty spots on your team and you didn't think to look at these guys. So I think we're going to kick things off with that, right? That's the idea here.
Yeah, and the reason why I kind of was thinking about this is, again, I'm by default almost somebody who looks further term or forecast further term. So now that we're getting into playoff time, it's kind of harder for me to do these things because you look at guys like, for example, Ben Bishop, I saw available at 55%. I'd say go out and get him if he's available, but most leagues only have 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks left. So like, there's really no point going down that avenue at this point. But it'll be interesting with you because you're always on top of from the betting side, seeing what you want now. It'll be interesting to see between the two who we go for. So I know you were kind of excited to go. So why don't you kick things off?
Yeah, I'll kick things off here. I'll start with my number one forward. If you hear this, he's really good this week, and next week I still think he's solid. I got Nick Ritchie as a pickup. He's 23% owned across Yahoo, which I think is very low. He's on the number one power play unit now in Boston, and given his position on the team in the power play, he's in front of the net, so he has all that opportunity, like Wayne Simmons, any of those guys, to scoop up a power play goal for you. He's been his averaging shots has been going up, his ice time has been going up, and of course he's always a solid contributor to hits. So that's who I have as my
He's such a Boston player too.
Yeah. And if you're not going to hear this before, but if you heard this today, Boston has 5 games this week, so he's definitely a must-have and a must-roster at this point. He's up 8% already today, which
and
is
that's a big thing to look at, the games played, and I think we're going to eventually start talking about that. That's one thing I didn't take into account at all.
Me either.
I know I was scrambling a little bit. I've been really busy before the podcast today, specifically in between when we kind of were talking about the idea. So I didn't get as much research as I really wish I would get in terms of the games played perspective. But I'm glad you mentioned that because I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's rotate now. Let's go back and forth, one each.
Okay. So my top forward is I almost said Nick. Oh crap, what's his first name? Robertson from Dallas. Justin or
I honestly
can't remember. I had it in my brain. I wrote down Robertson here, and I thought I was gonna have it right, but now all my brain wants to say is Nick. Actually, it's the brother who is owned by the Maple Leafs. It's the Leafs' big prospect. But from Dallas, he's low rostered. He's been shooting a ton. He's been playing on the top line. Jason, thank you, Jason Robertson. I actually have him rostered myself, just because he's shooting a ton. He's a guy that has almost the old school mentality where it's get the puck to the net. So he shoots from all angles. So if you're a league that has shots on goal, or maybe you're looking to get a little bit more bang for buck, he might be a guy that you want to look at. It's funny that I mentioned Bishop randomly off the top of my head earlier and then end up back at Dallas. The one thing to keep in mind, though, this is very short term because Sagan is expected to be back. And once that happens, I do expect one of these names that are performing, whether it's a Robertson, whether it's a Hintz, whether it's a Pavelski or whatever, even Ben to a degree, to take a dip. But for this week and maybe next week, I think Robertson could help you get some points that you're looking for. I think he has 3 game winners in the last 2 weeks. So
yeah, I like that. I honestly wasn't on my radar, but just a quick look when I looked up the name for you, it seemed like a solid one for sure. Okay, so for my second forward, I'm going to go with Sam Reinhart. He's currently 38% owned across the league. I know. You hear a name like Reinhart, you hear the Buffalo Sabres. You're like, why would I own anyone on the Buffalo Sabres? I get it, but he is averaging almost 20 minutes per game now, taking over with Eichel down. He's finally in his natural position of center, which is pretty solid, and he's been actually getting shots. He's been their power play, and with the new coach, I don't know if you've watched them, you might not have, but with the new coach, they've definitely opened up their offense a little bit, and they're playing a much more fast-paced game of hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the opportunities are there. If you're in a deep league, I would definitely consider top-line player and top-line minutes. So it's definitely, I think, a solid pickup.
And on top of that, if you're a believer that Buffalo's not going to move him, which I don't think they're going to move Reinhardt, they've got a lot of other pieces that they'd move or want to figure out first. So when Buffalo does inevitably move some of these pieces or assets out, the ice time is going to only
Yeah.
open up, which means more time on ice, more shots, hopefully more points by osmosis from all of that other stuff with ice time come along with it, right?
Yeah, and I think when I was looking at to, maybe I'm wrong, that they had a couple of easy games coming up too with like Philadelphia. That's always a good chance to get some points, but that was last week, so I think I'm mixing them up. So just forget I've said
Yeah.
that, and don't
Yeah.
worry about it. Pick them up. All right, who's your second go?
My second forward is Ricard Raquel out of Anaheim. He's been injured for the last week, which could have been perfect for a lot of teams who happen to be on bye weeks. I know last week was bye weeks for a lot of different people through a fantasy. So anybody who was coming off a bye week who didn't get the opportunity to stash him already after he had his hot streak, I think is it's time to get him now because he'll be playing maybe not next game, but the game after, and for the next 2 weeks. I believe they have 8 games over the next 2 weeks,
Yeah, they do.
and then 3 games the final week. So, yeah, I think he's if he gets traded, that could throw everything off the rails and could totally disrupt everything I just said. But assuming he stays in Anaheim, he hasn't really had the greatest opportunity to play with Zegras. And Zegras has been just tearing it up in Anaheim lately with Drysdale. Their power play looks really fun to watch, even though Anaheim doesn't really score a lot of goals. They have a lot of nice opportunities. So getting him back in the fold there could prove one of two things: either he needs to move on, or he fits within that. And if he fits within that, his assets or his worth is only going to skyrocket. So
Sounds good. All right, my third forward. This one's more of a feel, a personal feel. I don't know if a lot of people would agree with it, but I have Jack Hughes as a number three. He's 36% owned right now. He's playing on the second line in Devils, so he's not always going to be up against the top talent on the teams against. He still puts up a lot of shots, and I like watching Jack Hughes. I've watched a lot of him recently, and he just always seems to do these shiny things. He gets nice chances all the time. He's just completely hasn't been finishing. I think he's due to have a breakout week, and that's kind of this more just a feel more than anything on a player, and that's who I got for my number three.
that's probably a good call. And I didn't know what percentage he was at, but we've seen twice before he's had these little hot spurts. And again, with ice time, if New Jersey does move Palmieri, and I mean, Palmieri does create a little space for him, which could hurt.
That's true.
Again, more ice time typically means more production.
Yeah, and at the very least, he can average like at least 3 shots a game. Which if you're missing on points, you're at least getting some peripherals with him, and he's pretty consistent. At least getting some shots. No hits from him though. That's the one.
If you're in a league with no face-offs, though, his worth is less. If you're in a league with no face-offs with hits and blocks, he's not that valuable. But if you're in a league with face-offs, blocks, and hits, he's probably on your radar as well. So depending on what kind of your league's set up in, he may or may not fit.
This is more a points league. I'm kind of looking at him, points and shots.
My third forward is actually from the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's Alex Galchenyuk. For right now, just listening to local radio, the Leafs were trying or have been trying to get a forward, a winger specifically to play with Tavares and Nylander. That's been the talk around town for probably 3, 4, 5 weeks now. It sounds like the Leafs actually checked in yesterday on Palmieri, and he had Leafs on his no trade, and he said, no, I don't want to. I would imagine that probably has something to do with crossing the border thing. He probably just doesn't want to deal with that if he has another option, or even just to stick out the year in New Jersey and then move forward from there. with that being said, the Leafs are going to now, it seems like, change their strategy to maybe acquire a lower end defenseman and a goalie. If that's the case, then Galchenyuk looks to have maybe moved into the second line spot on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And their power play sucks right now. They haven't scored in the last, I think, 27 opportunities or something like that.
Yeah, we like to
It's the
call that
second.
X do around here.
Yeah, it's the second worst streak in Toronto Maple Leafs history, if I can recall correctly. They're still quite a ways away from their worst one, which I think was 40. So what I'm saying is, you won't probably get many power play points, but he's a big shooter and he has high offense potential.
Awesome.
So I like where he sits.
All right, sounds good. I'm gonna go on to defenseman here. I just got one, 52% owned, so there's a good chance you might have missed the boat on this guy, but I got Matt Grzelcyk as from Boston. Again, this is a little bit played into it that they play 5 times, but this guy is now definitely taking over the role from McAvoy as the number one quarterback on this power play, and we all know when Boston has it all going, their power play can be very strong. So I think if you're in a league where it's really really hard to get a quarterbacking defenseman, which usually by this point in the year it should be, probably missed the boat already on Adam Fox. If he was probably the last good chance at that. So I give Matt Grzelcyk as the next opportunity up here for that.
Good pick. Good pick. I've been watching him all year. I would have added him myself earlier. I like guys who add some physicalness or some shooting aspect, and he didn't quite cut it for me, so I didn't quite love him too much. But I've been watching him all year. He should be somebody that should be watched by a lot of people,
Should be
if not rostered yet. So good call. Yeah, good call. My defenseman I picked is actually a guy coming off the IR. And it actually makes a lot of sense for anybody who hasn't really been paying attention to this lately and only been making judgments on how shitty Jordan Binnington has been. Well, if you look at the injuries that St. Louis has been dealing with, they've been losing their top two. They haven't had their top two defensemen for about the last 10 games, which coincides with the terrible stats Binnington has, which coincides with the amount of goals St. Louis is giving up, which coincides with their terrible record.
Yeah.
So, I think him coming back, Parayko's always been a leader in shots on goal. He's always been a leader in hits, and even in blocks, he's always been a huge contributor. So if you're in that league, a guy coming off IR, again, same situation. He's the type of guy that if he's playing the minutes he might get, he probably is way better than anything that should be on.
I'll be honest, he's been a cornerstone of my other team 3 years in a row. Every year I have him just because he eats up. So he's such a solid stud. Yeah. So if that's
it's
a good
not
call.
fancy at all, but it's always he just chips away and chips away and chips away. And those guys are valuable, especially from the defensive spot where you can't really expect offense. You need guys to make sure they give you that stuff every day. He's kind of like a Trouba in that sense.
Yeah. No, I love that one.
But yeah.
All right, moving on to goalie here. This one's a little interesting. I got 44% owned. I got good old Martin Jones of the San Jose Sharks. This one has to do a little bit with he's taken over the net in San Jose. San Jose's turned it on the past couple weeks, and they're actually, believe it or not, fighting for a playoff spot now. They're in the hunt. I don't believe it, but it's
because of St. Louis. If St. Louis didn't have this terrible stretch, all those other teams wouldn't be in here.
100%. But his next 2 weeks, so this is kind of 2-week play. He's going to be a main starter if you need a goalie, if you're desperate. He has some easier games, playing the Ducks 3 times and LA a couple times. So for that aspect, I think he's a little bit safer. Again, he is Martin Jones, but he has been hot. So I'd be willing, if I'm desperate for a goalie at this point. 44%, he's available, and he'd be someone I'd be taking a shot on if I was desperate.
That's a good call, and I'm surprised if I had to ask you, did you have an honorable mention goalie at all?
I did. I had 2. I'll give one being Allmark was one, and then my other one was, who was it? I want to say it was Aiden Hill, but I think there was someone else. I think it was Aiden Hill.
So it's funny because I had 2 goalies as well, and my honorable mention was Allmark as well. I think we're on the same boat there. Kind of assuming he's going to be traded. to one of the better teams.
Yeah,
Projects well
the
for him.
thing why I didn't have him is because of he's on the Sabres and not getting the wins. Otherwise,
Yeah,
he fills up the stat sheet. Otherwise, like
yeah.
saves and save percentage are all fairly decent.
If you're in like a dynasty pool or something and you can keep players, or for cheap waiver ads now, if that's how your league works, if you add him and then he gets traded to one of the teams that I suspect are calling in on him and Buffalo moves him, yes, there's going to be that 7 day probably quarantine, so you're going to miss a week, and if you're not in playoffs, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But if you add him this week and he gets traded the next couple of days and he's ready for the next week of playoffs, I think he could be a steal if he ends up going to Colorado or something like that.
He might not get the games played in Colorado though. That's the only downside.
That's true. That's true.
He's definitely going to get the
Um,
starts in Buffalo right now.
but my actual goalie that I picked was your boy Cal Peterson out of LA.
Yeah, boy.
Um, I'm kind of frustrated by him, to be honest. I've rostered him 3 separate times throughout the season, and I've got decent stats. Um, Decent being like 908 save percentage,
Yeah.
250 something goals against, and 0 wins out of the 3 times I rostered him.
Yeah.
Yet if you look at his stats are like 920 save percentage, like a 2 point something goals against. It's like I keep picking him up at the worst times, whatever's happening with that. But that being said, he's top 5 in the NHL for save percentage, which says something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, he's getting a little bit more rubber than some of the other goalies, which is inflating that a tad. But there's also Quick pushing him for the ice time, so that should also theoretically steal away from that, and it's not. So
Yep.
I think he's a guy that people should watch, especially if LA can continue to play well moving forward. They're rating that bunch with
Yep.
San Jose.
Exactly.
St. Louis.
Love it. All right, that's basically wrapping up our overall fantasy talk, I think, for today.
Yep.
Maybe next week we'll do some people you should cut that are probably still
Mhm.
rostered.
Yeah.
But we're gonna move on to our
Good call.
own dynasty league, Koflani, and we're gonna go on to our own dynasty league and just run down. We had a short quarterfinal week last week, and it was only 2 games in our league itself. But yeah, right.
Yeah, last week there wasn't too much going on. There was actually one waiver bid, we must mention.
Yeah.
It's very important. Not really, but Capo Kakinen from Minnesota, who's even lost the starter gig to Talbot,
Yeah.
which
I
is
don't know.
interesting.
Yeah. It looks like, and like honestly, he hasn't even done anything to get it lost, other than they gave Talbot a little bit of runway, and he ran with it. Like he hasn't. So they gave Talbot like back-to-back starts once, and then he
Against Vegas, and he won both. So
yeah.
I mean,
So Kakinen, I don't know. He might not get a lot of starts this week. He's not starting tonight already against Colorado. So
I think that was just a bit of a hope.
Yeah,
in terms of
for sure.
just hoping he comes back to form, because I don't think Talbot's going to continue this hot. And then typically when goalies give up the ball, the other one will run with it in that situation.
It does
right?
seem though that sometimes goalies, it's not so much the goalies, like for this instance, not so them, it's the team in front of them.
Mhm.
And like it might be that case and that going on here. I'm not totally certain. I do know though, one of those games that Talbot played against Vegas, unreal. He robbed it.
Yeah.
Unreal.
I was watching the second game, which was an important game for me because a guy I was playing had Talbot.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, he has Talbot back to back. He'll only get 1 win in this situation. And he gets 2. But the funny thing, or not so funny, however you want to look at it, is after the second period, you know how when they come back from break, they start talking about stuff, and they usually drop a bunch of stats. Well, they're going on and on and on about how Vegas hadn't lost up by a goal this year, and how Fleury hadn't lost a game since 2011 when up by 2 or whatever it was. And like they just said like 9 stats about why Vegas was winning this game.
That's when you're doomed. Yeah.
I was like, I was on my computer facing this way. The TV was over here, and I was like, well, thank you for telling me what's going to happen this period. And I walked away, and I came back, and I was like, I knew.
You should have opened up a sports book as soon as you heard that and just like.
Yeah. But it was ridiculous. So yeah. I just couldn't believe that happened. But yeah, I mean, good luck for Jesse getting him. Who knows? He could run with it.
Yeah.
Minnesota gives up a lot of shots, but they're a lot of low risk shots. So it's free. It's
Yeah, and I don't.
butter
Yeah,
saves.
I don't think he's really looking for to fill in on his roster like a starting goalie. He's just looking for
Yeah,
something. He lost Demko with the whole COVID thing going on, so
true.
he's just trying to fill a little bit of a hole. He still has
Yeah.
two somewhat decent starters, I think.
He also might be a little bit afraid of what's available on waivers, and he may not want to have to either get up early or waste all his ads on gambles, or because
Yeah,
that's the way it's going to turn out potentially this week. Is that if you're sitting there at 2 o'clock and you don't know the starter, but there's three other guys waiting to
you have to
some
pull a
you're going to
trigger,
take a
right?
gamble, yeah. And like you could add a guy like the perfect example would have been Tampa Bay on Sunday. It was McElhinney, supposed to be McElhinney all day, and then they said that it was announced 13 minutes before game time, and it was announced Gibson was being called up because McElhinney tweaked something in the morning skate or whatever it was, the
Yeah,
skate,
seriously.
the evening skate or whatever it was. So
Like if
he
someone
came
took
to
a
him and said, "I
gamble
can't
the
go."
night before because they know it would be a big fight, yeah, it would have.
Or even the morning, up to 30 minutes before, everything pointed towards McElhinney. And it was only an injury that he didn't go, and they went to a third guy. I almost guarantee you, in that situation on a Sunday when people are fighting, somebody would have grabbed McElhinney versus Detroit.
Yeah,
Somebody would have wasted an ad on McElhinney to find out that Gibson was starting.
yeah,
Guaranteed.
guaranteed. I
Guaranteed.
agree. And I hope
Like,
I'm not that guy. That's why I've been
yeah.
happy carrying three goalies all for the past like 6 weeks. But now, for the first time in like 6 weeks, I only have two goalies. I'm gonna be right in the thick of the battles again. I'm not looking
And
forward to it.
that's the thing, is that like all year, everybody's been saying, "Well, there's goalies available." But yeah, throughout the season, here and there and there and here, depending on the ebbs and flows, when you need that one goalie for a week or 10 days, he's there. There's a couple there. But when you're in the playoffs, when everyone's in that situation, and they're all fighting for stars, you need them in hand. And a guy like you is sitting pretty, and like that's why I was so disappointed, and why I I always joke, whatever, say I don't want to be caught with the music with nowhere to sit, right?
Yep.
Like I always feel that way with goalies. I always want as many as I can, hoard them, stash them, because when it comes down to it, I want the options, I want the protection, I want the safety net. I had 5 options and they all failed me.
Yeah,
So like,
seriously.
what can you do, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm running two this week, so we'll see. It's gonna be. I don't,
yeah.
but I think against the opponent I'm against, it's all I need. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, should be close, but let's get into it, I guess.
yeah,
Then,
let's do it. Let's
um,
predictions last week first, right? I think we both had the
yeah,
same picks. We both picked me.
we had the exact same picks. Yeah, we
But
were correct. And let's get into the matchups quickly. Breakdown.
for last week,
Let's start
right?
with yours first.
For
Yeah,
last week, yeah. All
let's
right,
start
I'm
with
gonna
yours
pull it open.
first.
So the Scrub Dynasty, we all love these guys. They took home the win, 7-deuce over regular Dynasty. So I don't know. He never agreed to change his name. I never really
No.
asked. I didn't ask him. I'll be honest. Honestly, the score, it looks bigger than it was. I was sweating all week. I'm not gonna lie, and I kept waiting for him to make a move to put the pressure on, and he never really did it on me. Like I was waiting Friday. I was expecting a goalie to be added because otherwise, I got out to a big lead on wins and goalies right away.
Mhm,
Like I got
mhm.
6 wins. That's the most I got all year. I got out to a big lead, and I just kept waiting for him to add goalie, and he never really challenged me on saves. Never challenged me on wins because he had, I
Which
think,
is surprising. That could be 2 starts that get saves and wins.
yeah, and well, that's what I think. What it was, well, I think his downfall, honestly, was that his first two starts of the week were pretty good, and mine were whatever. So he was leading goals against average and save percentage. So he didn't want to risk losing those because that was like a stranglehold
Sure.
on him. But that just
Yeah,
led me to be able to walk away with the other ones.
yeah. Keep
Over
keep going for it.
overall, my two core guys just had an amazing week. I've really been running the McKinnon Landeskog combo. It worked out very well for me this week. They both got 7 points.
Hmm.
William Carlson had 2 goals, which was a good ad. Theodore had probably one of his better weeks. Like my team had a very good week. Otherwise,
Hmm.
power play point wise, they didn't. But he had it close for a long time, and then eventually I just eventually held. Really, my team just kept doing what it's supposed to, and it held. So that's
It's one game winning goal, one hit, 2 wins, and two starts is the difference of maybe even tying that. But you would have had tiebreak anyways, I believe, right?
he beat me during the year off that
Oh,
miracle
okay.
off that miracle game winning Dubois game where Dubois went
Oh, right.
off
I
on
remember
his
that.
first game back. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. So yeah, like I mean, if he had tiebreak, he maybe could have gone a little harder after it, but he seems happy with his picks and he seems
Honestly,
happy to
like
try and
yeah,
kick my ass 3 times this year. So
he would have
let him
had
do
to
it.
really dismantle his team to even have a chance. But
Yeah.
I don't know if he had the ads to be able to waste. I would have at least went for it a little harder.
He changed his team to face me when we played back to back in rivalry week,
Yeah.
and he never really changed it back. And then now playing you, like you said, he would have had to change too much. Plus, he had a couple key injuries. That now that he plays me again, he's already set up good. So
Yeah,
it's
like I could,
like,
honestly I could see it. Like if you think you're gonna lose anyway, you might as well make sure you win the next round so that you get the extra pick in each round. Like
yeah,
it makes sense. But
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I thought he was gonna like. I had nightmares because of the last time I faced him. So I
yeah,
thought there was a good chance he was gonna come back. So I was like sweating like a bullet, sweating probably
yeah,
a lot more than I did. But I'm gonna pull up your game here.
yeah.
The other quarterfinal match, Dylan Beefy versus you, Mr. Maverick. This one was super close.
Yes, it was.
I'll let you run this one down if you want.
I mean, if you watch the videos and you watched last week, you would have known that we both were basically saying that I had no chance. Like
Yeah,
David versus Goliath of all probably that we've seen yet in this fantasy league.
yeah,
At least that I can recall off the top of my head. Obviously, it's more brighter because it's my own team, but I think it may have been in playoffs. I mean, last year I guess was cut off because of COVID, right? So I guess it's pretty easy to say that was probably the biggest David versus Goliath matchup we've seen in the playoffs yet.
yeah,
Dylan was projected to win the pool. He had a couple bad weeks. His goalies really let him down, and he dropped last second from second down to facing me. So he should have had the bye anyways. I should have been taking on theoretically this top two team. Basically, you're all tied. 2, 3, and 4
yeah.
are all basically tied in my eyes,
You would have
right?
lost. You would
So
have lost worse to me. So you had a
I
better.
would have lost to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like it turned out well.
it might have been
Um,
Nick's team.
maybe. I mean, I used all 7 of my ads very strategically
Yeah,
and very like I managed the hell out of last week. That for me is the most satisfying week in terms of just managing and like trying to get the advantage on thinking ahead and
yeah,
planning and doing all that. And I thought I did a very good job, and I thought I got it real close. On Sunday, I knew it was over when Gibson got crushed by Detroit.
yeah,
I really needed that win. Like, had he won that game, it probably still would have been a tie, and Dylan had tiebreak, so he still would have won. But regardless, like, I'm not disappointed. I mean, obviously I'm disappointed, but like, it is what it is.
hmm
I already accomplished my trading my picks.
yeah.
I
I was
said my
proud,
next goal
man.
was to win one round in the playoffs, and I didn't quite get there, but I put up a fucking hell of a fight.
I
So
know. And if we
it is
went
what it
back
is.
to the very first podcast of this season and we told you that you'd be taking Dylan to the Sunday of the first round, I think you'd be happy about that. So if we take a look back from perspective, you had a hell of a season for a team that was really on paper supposed to be the worst, one of the worst, because you guys
And I
sold
said to
last year.
And I said to Nick that on paper, in terms of not having picks, like I don't think I had my first. My keepers were 2, 3. I don't think I had my 4, my 5. I had 1 or 2 picks in the 6, then 2 picks in the 8. Like really not a good draft. And I still was able to make the playoffs and almost win a round.
Yeah.
So I think it just goes to show that like if you pay attention, you're willing to put the work in. You can make the playoffs every year. Yeah, you might not be able to get the president's $100 money in the pocket. But hey, anything can happen in the playoffs, and
Yeah. I think you guys
also goes to show you need ads in the playoffs, so don't run out before you get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right, let's get
Like I
on
said,
to
I had to use them early to make that facade, right? So
Yeah.
it worked in the
Yeah.
end.
So we're gonna take a look now at the second round here. So we got the semifinals going on. So that's the 4 final teams playing for the championship. But we also have the consolation bracket. So you and Nick, the guys that just lost last week, are playing for 5th place now. And then the other 4 teams in our league are now battling in a 4-team bracket with the winner getting the best pick next year, first round pick or first overall pick. and technically first pick in every round,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So we'll kick things off with the constellation bracket, right? Just that.
Yeah, I think we should start off with me and Nick because after this week, we'll be the only two that are done.
Okay.
Everyone else will still have matchups remaining. So Nick and my season is over after this week, regardless of how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
My season's already over. Nick's already beaten me twice. His team's set up to beat me. I'm riding basically one roster spot short because I went with Gibson there. So I don't have that extra goalie, which Rask is coming back. So whenever he comes back, he just slides into that spot. But for this week, that means maybe one start for Rask. So I'm down on goalies. I need to have a huge week with him, full ads.
Yeah, it's
not
pretty
happen.
much
I need like 3 shutouts or something.
Like you're gonna need a lot of help for sure. But you know, it could happen. I know I'm not picking you, but it could happen.
To be honest, I'm not concerned because, like I said in the chat, I don't own most of my picks. So where my picks slot in the draft are basically irrelevant.
Yeah.
I own other people's picks, so they're all over the place, and that's by design. So that way it doesn't matter if I finish first or second or fifth or ninth. I still have those strategic picks throughout the drafts, right?
No, totally. So that's a good point.
And it's 4 and 5. It's one pick slotting.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out there too because we already have some scores as we're going through this. So like we're an hour in now to the week. So some games are underway, and you'll see some scores going on already. All right, let's go on to the next one then. We'll go with Beer Buds and Captain Clutch, Ben and Sean here. I don't know, like dude. I hope people didn't forget. Everyone knows that they're in action again, right? I hope so.
I don't know.
But we got some interesting here. We got Beer Buds, 7th place versus last place Ben. Ben's still looking for his first win, hoping to pick it up in the playoffs. I'm not gonna lie, I predicted Sean to win this one. However, I think he's gonna take this one better. I just think his team's better, and managing wise, I think he has a little bit of an edge. What about yourself?
Yeah, the other thing that's going to be tough as well for Ben is Ben's probably not really paying attention much, and he's got Markstrom, who's only going to have one game after tonight this week. So if he doesn't pay attention, he may actually not hit minimum ads or minimum requirements for goalie.
Yeah. And just looking right now, he hasn't updated his roster at least today because he has Keller on the bench.
Yeah.
So come on, Ben. Here's the Ben.
So I think Sean is going to take this one. Ben hasn't won yet, so I don't see why now would be it, especially when Sean was one of the hotter teams down the last couple of weeks.
Agreed.
I don't think it's even going to be close. I think it's going to be probably the most lopsided matchup of the week.
Agreed. All right, and now we got Rocket Trees Jesse versus Steve, 2 goalies here. I honestly forget who I put in to win. But I'm going to go. I do know. I picked Jesse to win this one. That's who you got too?
I got Jesse as well. I mean, Steve has 9 goalies, but besides that, I think Steve actually now deserves the title for most goalies because he's pushing it in terms of how many I would roster. But I looked at the goalie schedules. I'm assuming that Jesse's going to be active because he has been saying so and he cares.
And he understands the value of winning the constellation bracket for sure, which it's a big value. In theory, you get 5 keepers by winning.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So, I mean, he's going to pay attention. He's got the ads. I don't see the only way it works is if Steve somehow successfully navigates the dropping of his goalies or activating and stashing of his goalies, because I think 2 of them are on IR.
No, they're off IR now.
Are all of them?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know what Steve's going to do because he has 5 goalies, and I don't think he has any ads.
One ad.
One ad. So we could drop down to 4 goalies. I guess let all 5 at least play one, but they're all going to play on the same day. Like none of them play today.
I genuinely feel like Steve is just going to keep them all so that all the other people fighting for goalies don't have more options. I feel like he doesn't want to flood the market with more options in goal.
So he's just playing saboteur at this point.
I think he is.
All
I think
right.
he probably realizes he probably won't win anyways. So why lose and feed free agency? Just hold ground. It's one pick, right?
Fair
He
enough.
probably thinks I'll still beat Ben, so I'm just rocking one pick.
Well, not with five. I don't know about with five goalies.
Who knows, right?
The shitter bowl.
Who
That'll be a good
knows?
one. All right. All right. Let's go on to. We'll leave mine for last because that's how I roll.
Yep.
Rundles Puckets versus Beefy. So we got first versus fourth. Um, yeah. For me, I got Rundles. Like I find it hard to bet against the guy who basically lost once all year.
To
Uh,
me.
to you, yeah. Once all year. We got what? He's got Hellebuck Varlamov against Talbot. Potentially goalie trouble. Like it's gonna come down. They both have very good offense. But who's postponed this week? We got Calgary's postponed. You said he's got two big Calgary players.
Yeah, that's true.
Is he gonna drop one? Maybe he probably should, right?
Probably not,
But he
but
probably.
maybe.
Whoops. And then we got yeah. So I'm just gonna give it to Jamie.
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
The only thing that Dylan has going for him is that Dylan, how do I say this? Dylan, his investigation or his desire to dig into deeper and more brighter options might serve him well.
Yep.
I don't know how deep Jamie dives into free agency. I feel like if there was seven, I guess what I'm saying is if Jamie has 7 ads and Dylan has 7 ads, and I had to put my money on who has the better ads, I'd probably have to go with Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably the only benefit I would give Dylan this week.
Yeah, I could see that. And honestly, looking over at Jamie's teams, like we talk about this all the time, is you got to have that one or two spots where you can rotate, and Jamie doesn't necessarily have that as much as Dylan. So I don't know. I would suspect that just looking at Dylan's team, he's not going to keep Lindholm for next year. I don't think. So
He likes Lindholm, so
I
maybe.
know. Yeah. Well, at what point do you sacrifice a Calgary player? Because I know I'm about to.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in the next game here. But yeah, we both got Rundles.
Yeah, I got Jamie. I got Jamie.
So far, we're
I think it
four.
will be a relatively easy week, but it will end up close. So like a 7-4, but like decidedly 7-4 matchup type thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could get on board with that. All right. Leading off here, we got Joey's Iowa's guys versus the Scrub Dynasty, the legends themselves. Everyone wants to play for them, but everyone gets traded eventually. But yeah, for this one, I got to bet on myself, obviously. So let's hear who do you got? Who do you think's gonna take this one?
I'm not gonna lie. This is the matchup that's got me weirded out. I found it hardest to predict this just because Joey's team's been so successful all year with no ads.
It's a good team. It's very good.
It's a very good team and it's very good foundation. And like part of me wants to cheer for him because like I want to see him win with using like no ads basically because like that would
The
be
show
awesome.
can be done, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, like obviously my bias, I'd rather see you win.
Oh, I
That's not
appreciate
really,
that.
that's not really fair, but
No, I know.
at the
I know what
same
you're
time,
saying.
like it's just if it's more of a jealousy perspective for the podcast. Like I'd rather get your emotions caught and like
Yeah.
and
Well,
talk to you in the
heartbreak
summer
can be
about
an
how you won
emotion
and
that you
stuff.
can catch, right?
Well, yeah, but like I want to hear about your ebbs and flows and like your tough decisions and stuff like that. I want to get your takes later, and you can still give me those, but like when you lose, it's a little bit different because you're a little bit jaded in a sense. Where if you win, it's more stuff we can talk about.
Fair enough.
It's great if Joey wins, but it just then we don't have as much material to necessarily talk about. So that's kind of the jealousy perspective I have from that. In terms of actual statistics, I tried to break down goalie starts. It's hard because if I have to assume that he's going to add goalies, then things could get interesting. I just realized Jari is hurt right now. So it's Vegas goalies versus your goalies. So it's really on the back of Vegas this week.
Which sucks for me is my own using my own team against me. It's bullshit.
Yep. It makes you not want to watch the games, right? You're like, fuck.
My Fleury jersey has definitely got a curse on it right now.
And I mean, who do they play? That don't Vegas have a good week this week? Yeah, they got St. Louis, and Arizona.
It's not
So
it's not
like
terrible, yeah.
those are 4 games where I wouldn't be surprised if there's a shutout in that 4 game stretch.
Yeah, I know. And that's how we tied last time is because he literally started the week with a Vegas shutout last time we played. And I was just scrambling the rest of the week to even
Yeah.
I almost won, but it was super close last time. Like we tied, so I don't. What does the tiebreaker go to?
So actually, I wrote that all down. It's all on the sheet up at the top in the pink. I wrote down for the Klefboms weekly prediction.
Weekly prediction. Okay, so
So I
Joey,
wrote down
he's has tiebreaker above his head, so that means he has the tiebreaker.
So that's the other reason I couldn't remember why. There's another thing I want to talk about. Thank you for bringing that up. You guys are the only ones that would have to go to double tiebreak.
Oh God.
Yeah, because you guys tied. You guys tied in the regular season.
Yeah.
So the double tiebreak is playoffs is regular season seeding.
Yeah, and then he has the
So
seeding.
because he finished above you, he has which is essentially the same rule as
as before. Yeah,
because that was what decided before. But yeah. So he beat you by what was it 2? I think we tracked it as 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was super.
He beat you by the season. So it would have been interesting to see if that tied, because then we would have gone to the most amount of 1 categories.
Jeez.
Okay. Which would
Okay.
have been triple tiebreak.
Oh man. Okay. So for me, I'm just gonna look at this objectively right now. I made an ad last night with Morgan Riley for 2 reasons. A, because I thought Nick was gonna do something, and I just want a little bit of an extra game, knowing he also plays today. So it's kind of like adding for both.
Yeah.
Goalie wise, I got 2 goalies right now. I'm not in the market looking for. I think I can win goalies with these 2. Definitely considering Vegas sometimes isn't the most shot given up team. So if I get the same amount of starts as him, he only has 4. If I have to, I'll stream 1 goalie. Maybe midweek. I'll just probably find the best one possible.
Drager.
Exactly. Somebody.
I grabbed Drager in my other pool. I have a feeling. So, sorry to jump here for a second, but Quenneville in Chicago, Quenneville's always loved his main goalie. He's like a lot of other old school coaches where he likes to play his goalie. Don't be surprised here if he says, screw you, GM. You signed Bobrovsky, but Drager's the better goalie. So
yeah,
I'm putting him between the pipes.
So my team is heavily reliant on. Right now, this was not designed coming into the playoffs, but I have 2 guys from 2 teams. Like I have 2 Vegas guys, 2 Colorado guys. So that's kind of worrisome. But Carlson, again, keeping Carlson at least for today because he plays today. So why waste an ad? Braden Shen's just like a lot of these guys are carryover from last week. Like Braden Shen, he's a replaceable. Goudreau, and that's what I wanted to touch on. I was talking about. He's my first overall pick this year. He's going to be dropped after tonight. I'm certain. There's no point in carrying him. Definitely, he hasn't been that great, and if I don't have him all week, it's not worth the risk. Just having him for 1 round next week, it's not worth it. He can just become my new filler.
We should circle back to the reason why you're talking about that, and the reason is because of Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah,
and with the Canucks being so fucked up right now with this whole COVID thing, they aren't probably playing within the next 10 games. So anybody who happens to have Vancouver as an opponent is likely also not playing.
Yeah.
There's some teams like Montreal who have makeup games. So it's quite possible if those games happen to be Calgary, or I don't know who owes what kind of makeup games, but theoretically it could create an opportunity to make a Calgary Montreal back-to-back if those 2 owe 2 games. Like if Montreal lost those 2 games against them, then that could be a thing. But if it's Edmonton, they owe it, and Edmonton's busy, well, they're not making up those games during that time. So like, I don't know yet. And last time when they announced the game replacements, it was literally like 3 days in advance.
Yeah,
So
I was really hoping
midweek.
because Joey has Quinn Hughes and he wasn't listed as anything until today. I was hoping he would be one of the guys that doesn't get on that COVID list. Like I've had to suffer through it so many times this season where the team's postponed, but my player isn't out, so he doesn't get to go on IR. But he luckily got that. The one thing he does have not going for him is he has 3 Winnipeg players who are going to be missing 1 game this week. But they are playing Ottawa tonight, so I guess that kind of makes up for it if they can really pile it on.
And these are the things you should probably check ahead if you care, because there's a couple games, obviously, if Vancouver isn't playing the next week following as well, that's going to be the final. So if you have any Vancouver players or anybody who's playing Vancouver and those games are disappearing this week and next week, like Gaudreau, like basically that's what you're saying is if Gaudreau has 1 game over the next 10 days and the season's over by then, and you're not keeping him, there's absolutely zero reason keeping name X. He's just name X. He's not Gaudreau. So
Exactly. Yeah. I don't care if I spent my first round pick on him.
At this point, it's irrelevant, right?
Yeah. But that basically sums it up. I think I have a shot. I want to win the finals. I've been calling my shot all year. And wouldn't it be glorious if every podcast I do a mention of some sort that I'm winning the whole thing and I actually do it?
You know what's funny, though? I you know me, I pick up trends and I see how things kind of are going and whatever. I find it funny with you because you have the same like footprint to success or same wave every year. You're kind of like, okay. Like you kind of just putter around, you get a little good, you win a couple, you lose a couple, you get frustrated, you make a couple moves, you make a couple trades, and then bam, you're in the Final Four every year.
Yeah, it's because I just kind of sit in the weeds. I let people play their cards, and I kind of figure out where does my hand fit into this whole game of game theory, and how does my team match up against the teams that matter. And I tried to build my team this year a little different than last year. I was the only I built my team a lot like how you went this year, focused on hits and shots on goal, because that's what did it last year, because no one was really super aware of that. So that's how I built it. I built it on goal. I always seem to hit on a cheap goalie that I draft late. I've been lucky that way.
Pick off waivers or acquire for cheap or whatever.
Yeah, I've been very lucky that way. Like this, for instance, this year I got Grubauer in the 10th round. He's 4th overall. Like so that
and
was
then you traded for Shesterkin.
Yeah, so like
where if I had decided I wanted him, I would have already grabbed him. And I think that's the difference between you and I mainly is that I believe you either have to be the first or the last to the party to get the best deals. You can't be wavering in the middle. I want to go. I put crosshairs on the guys I want, and I'm willing to overpay to get them in my hand now. And if those guys don't move on them, then I fall back and I play into your strategy.
Exactly, and that's what I did last year. Is that everyone was blowing their load, and then no one had a load left, and I did. And I knew there was one guy left on the market that no one would be able to match my price, so I'd be like Austin Matthews was who it was, and I got him right at the trade deadline for cheaper than everyone else got for theirs. I got him late. I didn't have a chance at the Presidents, and then I also got again lucky grabbing a goalie off the waiver wire with Leonard last season. When Fleury was just being atrocious, so that was lucky too. So I don't know. I try.
You know what's interesting though, because I've been doing some draft preparation and preparation for the keepers and stuff, and just looking through. I'll share a chart with you just because I'm friendly, but I'm not sharing with anyone else.
Oh, great!
But basically, I've done a chart where it's the entire draft, but not pick by pick. It's by team.
Okay.
So like I can see like how heavy in each part of the draft or where each team's heavy spot is, so that I can see like where my projected keepers are, so that I can see like which picks are available and where players are going and like what keepers other guys have that maybe I'd like instead, kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've been doing that kind of preparation. The draft's going to be interesting next year.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I know I have a busy off season because there's some things I got to do. I can't I slept a little bit this past off season. I was late to the party. I didn't get accomplished very much, but this off season I have some things I need to accomplish. Otherwise, I'm gonna not be able to pull off what I planned for this off season. So,
Yeah.
I got the goods on my team. Like, sadly, I'm gonna have to let some go. I got what 6 players in the top 25 right now, so I can't keep them all. Probably only can keep a few of them actually, but maybe someone wants one. Maybe I can get a couple. I don't know. I'm interested how the draft's gonna go. My team, like I've always been the guy. Like I'm not. I want to be the team that is there every year. Don't want to mortgage futures. I
Yeah.
just want to. That's why.
But see, I think you can mortgage up to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of my point, is that looking at the draft picks, like I would say after the 50th pick, so after the 5th round ish, there's probably a handful of non-keeper players that are still rostered.
Okay.
So like I'd say 50% of the last 60% of the league, or 60% of the draft, is now on free agency and unrostered.
Yep.
So like to me, an 8th rounder, like that's what, when Nick was saying, oh yeah, all my picks are up at an 8th rounder. Well, 6th, 7th, and 8th rounders, if you don't hit, are no better than all my 13ths and 14ths.
Yep.
Only benefit with me at that point is that if everybody else fucks up and picks the bad picks, I'm going to do my research.
And you're
So
not.
if
And you're
everybody
not
doesn't
fully.
take
You
my
don't
guys,
feel
they're
as
gonna be sitting
committed to
there.
these guys. If they struggle, you can drop them. And,
Exactly.
And that. No, I'm totally there with you. This week's gonna be. Yeah, it's interesting for me. I got some guys that I'm not in love with right now, but I gotta figure that out.
The other thing, the last thing too to keep in mind is next year is the first year of recycle for keepers.
After the
So
season.
the guys who are drafted after the season. So the next year, the guys. So like for me, for example, Vasilevsky and Leon are rentals next year. So if I'm not winning it, I'm gonna trade them. And Brady. But thankfully, Kucherov is now a new keeper in the 6th round for 4 years or 3 years.
So that's how I feel about McKinnon. I got him for 3 more years. It's so good. I'm so excited.
Yeah, but you got to burn a 1st rounder on him. I got to burn a 6th rounder. What's the difference between a McKinnon and a Kucherov? Not probably too much.
Oh, we'll see.
A bit, but
Kucherov's
not a
washed.
whole ton. I don't think. I don't think so. That's my biggest mistake. I should have taken Seguin and Cooch. I wish I was sitting here with Leon, Seguin, and Cooch. I'd be a lot happier, and then I'd probably just keep Brady. Go from there. But things you learn, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, that pretty much wraps her up, I think.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah,
I think so. Good luck. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, thank you. Pardon me, I'm worried. I think Colorado's been way too damn hot. That they're time for a cool off, and that's what worries me.
Yeah.
But all right, take care, dude.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, man. Take it easy.